So this is what is left of that Mongoose Dolomite with the 4-inch tire. After building my first drift trike, and I'm thinking about building another one, and I'm gonna see if I can reuse some of these parts that are on here for the next build. I'm definitely gonna use the front head tube, the rear tire, and I don't know what else, but probably cables, whatever. I also have some other parts that I've purchased beforehand. I still have another motor Predator engine still in the box. I got some piping that I'll use for the framing, tires. I'll just need to get me a set of rear wheels and build the front forks and handlebar. I'm going to need a new headset and rear axle bearings and some other things. So probably going to start cutting up this frame so I could get the parts off of it and see if I can somehow take off these gears on this rear tire, because I won't need them. So I took off the rear wheel and disassembled the frame. This is all I got left. And in case you're wondering how I'm going to use this back wheel for the front wheel, is I'm going to remove these gears, and I don't have the special tool that you need to put inside to loosen up the gears. So what I've done is with the TIG welder is I've run a couple of welds on the inside here just to tack it up so it doesn't spin anymore, and then I just got a pair of pliers and loosened it, and it comes right off, and that's what you're left with. And this I won't be ever using again, so that goes in the trash. Then you'll just put the nut back on here, and maybe shorten down this stub right here, and you got a front tire. It even has the disc brake. So I'm about to, or I was about to cut off the head tube to reuse this to basically weld on a couple of the frame for the new drift trike onto this right here. But what I found is this is the same size as this. So instead of cutting here and then having to do all kinds of grinding there, I'll just cut off a piece here and a piece there and actually have a bunch left over. This is in case you guys are using the same frame, which is the Dolomite. The head tube or the head set will fit perfectly inside here without any play. And instead of having to cut it here and grind off all of this stuff, you just cut off a piece here and you're ready to go. Alright, so here is the layout. This is how I start off building my trikes. Some people asked how I build them, and there's really I wasn't taught any way to do it. This is how I just figured it out. Basically, I started off by making this line on the ground, straight line, and then intersecting it with a 90-degree line. That would actually be where the axle goes. And then these little marks right here and right here are the marks for the end of the frame and the beginning of the back wheel. Now this back mark right here is where the end of the frame is, and right in between here is where the motor's going to sit. And I made another little mark right there that shows where the end of the seat is. So that's where the bend starts, that goes up to the head tube. And here's some of the tubing that I got. I bought these at Lowe's for I think it was like $20, $24 for each 10-foot length, and I got 4 pieces. And so I'm going to marking off everything. I'm going to leave a little bit of extra room in the back, just for adjustment. And plus there's some threads on the end of the thing, of the pipe, that I don't need. I'll have to cut those off. So the tube, or the pipe, will start its bend around this point right here. And again, we're going to use the Harbor Freight bender to make the 2 bends, and I got to make 2. So there's going to be a bend, like I say, about right here. It's going to go up, and then right about here it's going to go inward towards the head tube. Here's the first bend, and I'm trying to figure out the next angle that I'm going to need to mount the head tube where it needs to be mounted. And basically this angle right here is about 30 degrees, and I used this thing here to find the angle. So this is how I'm going to figure out how to get the intersecting point of where I need to mount the head tube and where the bend needs to be. So if we pretend that this line down here at the bottom is the ground, this is the top of the trike, we'll follow it all the way down here and set the tire on the ground. And depending on what angle we're going to use, I don't want a big angle or rake on the front tire. We're going to probably put the intersecting point around that area, which means that right at this area is where the head tube is going to be mounted. So there's going to be another bend, probably about right there. Here's the other one finished. I got them taped together so I can kind of take some measurements and see. What I'm probably going to do next is do a cross brace somewhere right here and give it a little bit of stability. I'll just tack it in. That way I can figure out what kind of angle I'm going to need to do to cut this area right here for the head tube. All of these angles that I did right here and down at the bottom are all at 30 degrees, and they lined up pretty good. Looks like the rake is going to be just where I need it. And I'll cut a couple of pieces and weld them up. Alright, here's the center cross brace, upper cross brace, whatever you want to call it, is welded on. Everything looks like it lined up really well. The back end did pull out a little bit, probably looks like about 1 inch, but I can just squeeze it back together when I weld it. So now I gotta try and figure out the exact angle I need for the down tube or head tube, and see if I have enough room with the tire and the forks. Alright, so this is how I'm going to figure out the angle of the head tube. Now, I put it down on the ground and lined it up with this black line on the bottom, which would be the ground, and put the tire wheel where I wanted it to be. And what I'm going to do is we'll put the head tube right about where it's supposed to be, and then we'll get this angle finder and kind of figure out what the angle is. One thing I did now that I'm doing this is originally I didn't want the tire to be too far away from the frame. So at this point, what I'm probably going to do is still put it in the bender and give it about another 10 degrees bend while I still can, and before I weld on the head tube and get that final angle. Here's the head tube mounted. I just used a hole saw and I cut a hole down the middle. Yep, I know it's sticking up a little bit farther here, but I can always trim it down because I'm making the forks so I can make them any size I need them to be. That's about the angle that it needs to be, and now I just need to weld it up. Alright, the head tube is mounted. I went ahead and cut it down already. Might cut it down a little bit more, I don't know. I'll wait till I get the handlebars on or the forks on to see how high that's going to be. I guess the next thing is to start the back end. I'm going to put a couple of more braces, I think right here and right there somewhere. And then of course the back end will come around like this for the framing, and then I'll need a piece of plate steel down at the back there to mount the motor. Other than that, it's coming out pretty nice. So added a couple more pieces onto the frame. Basically what I did was I added this piece right here and this piece, as well as the center support. And what these are is the bearing hangers are going to be mounted somewhere right here to support the axle. I went ahead and moved everything forward just a little bit because the seat is going to be somewhere in this area, just to make it more compact. The last drift trike that I made was a little bit stretched, so I wanted to make a little bit more compact version. I'm going to go ahead and cut it right here and right there, and have some plastic caps that go on the ends. I also need one or two more center supports, probably one right here, and maybe one, I don't know, somewhere right here, because around right here in this area is going to be a piece of 1/8 inch plate, which will hold the engine. Another thing I got to do is build the forks for this trike. So I went to the landfill and picked up this poor guy right here, which seems to have been abused a bit, so I'm gonna reuse some of his parts. The fork, of course, the forks themselves, the lengths are too short for that 26-inch wheel that I have, so I'm gonna cut these off and basically use this part here, the headset. See how that works. Alright, so here's the piece that I needed off of that fork. I basically cut off the two pieces that were hanging off the edge there, and then grinded it flat, and then I bent a couple of new pieces to make for the bigger tire. I measured the inside of there. It's 6 3/4 from where it needs to be mounted. I left these long so I can cut them however I need them. And this is looks like about 6 3/4 even. So all I got to do is make sure it's straight and then weld it up. Alright, the forks are done. Looks like they're all They line up pretty good. There's enough room in between the tire and the fork there. The only thing I got to do next is mount the bracket for the brake on the other side. Put a cap down at this bottom end here, just so I don't get a lot of debris inside there. I don't know if there'll be any getting in there anyways, but went ahead and did that. All that's left to mount this is to get the headset for the forks, and like I said before, I just need to put a brace right here in the middle, and maybe one somewhere around here, I don't know where. And I gotta cut off these end pieces, and it's coming along. Again, I ordered the axle and some other things so I can get it mocked up a little bit more proper. But not bad for do-it-yourself forks, I think.